Welcome to session 16. We were talking about Star Wars, and in the first released Star Wars trilogy, the character of Darth Vader is symbolic of the great majority of collective humankind, and, like it, has been seduced by the so-called dark side of the Force. In the case of literal greater humankind today, it has been seduced by materialism, the worship of things, by greed for these things, and by greed for the money that is needed to purchase them, by lust for power, and for the wealth that is needed to attain and keep it, and by negative feelings of anger, hatred, and feelings for revenge on our enemies. On the other side of the coin, it is very well known that there are many decent, loving people in this world. However, there are also others, many who feel and many who claim closeness to God through their religion, their faith, and so on. Be assured, however, that there are exceedingly few who, like the character of Luke Skywalker, have been willing to give up seeking anything for themselves. Now that was over a period of time, and who have instead truly dedicated themselves to a life of service. That's why the Judeo-Christian Bible, as an example, states that, quote, "Straight is the gate and narrow is the way, and few there be that find it," end quote. Luke Skywalker symbolizes the unselfish servant of higher positive unseen forces. He's a man who has been willing to reincarnate in this physical world to help get mankind back on track, to bring humankind out of the darkness and lead the way back to the light. In other words, to point humankind to and prepare them for the one who will follow, the one who is the master of the Aquarian Age, God's messenger for the planet, the person whose spirit is one with, and who is the physical manifestation of the return of the universal Christ, just as was the beloved Master Jesus around 2,000 years ago. This now maturing master of the Aquarian Age will then help humankind take the next steps on their long journey back to God. Now the character of Darth Vader as Luke's father again symbolizes the humankind that is the father, so-called, of us all. Luke's mission is made plain when in the Return of the Jedi he tells the dying Darth Vader, who has just thrown off the chains that had bound him to the dark side of the Force. He said to his Darth Vader, "I've got to save you." Vader's response tells us that Luke's mission to this point has been successful when he says, "You already have, Luke." He knows that with the help of his son, symbolizing one of the two literal sons, S-O-N-S, to be discussed later, he, representing humankind, has been freed from the dark side and has returned once more to the light. Other significant roles are symbolically portrayed by the other characters in the trilogy. Obi-Wan symbolizes those personalities who have mastered life in the material world and return only to serve. This service includes acting as teacher guides for those who are students on the path. Aren't we all, to one degree or another, students on the path? I think so. When these students reach a certain level of attainment, then Yoda in this trilogy then guides their training. The Emperor is actually symbolic of the Antichrist, who in the reality of today is about to come onto the world stage very soon. I don't know when, and I don't know where, and I don't know how, but I know it's going to be before too much longer. The relatively recent approach of the planet Mars in 2003 to the closest point to Earth that it has been in almost 60,000 years was not likely to have been an insignificant event in that regard, nor was it without significance in relation to the Afghan War and the invasion of Iraq by the United States, and even larger conflicts which are expected to follow in the years ahead. In the Star Wars story, those around Luke, his sister, his friend Han Solo, and others, are symbolic of those who will be there to follow an aspiring Jedi in order to assist with such an important work as bringing humankind back to the light, that which is symbolically being carried out by Luke Skywalker. As you might imagine, such missions are not an everyday occurrence. Excuse me. The beginning of the Star Wars story, another trilogy of films, was actually the second of two trilogies that were released. The beginning film of that trilogy, Episode 1, as you may know, was the first film in what was to be a series of three trilogies originally envisioned by the creator. This series is being called a prequel to the first released original trilogy of Star Wars films. This prequel trilogy, like the original, has given us a great many worthwhile things to consider in our thoughts and our meditations. One of those would certainly be how well-intended persons who are true seekers on the path can be tempted and seduced by negative influences, which in these films are called the dark side of the Force. It has been extremely interesting to watch the beginnings of the story as it unfolds in this, the first of the three as originally planned trilogies, but which in fact became only two trilogies to date, and I suspect that will be it. There's no question about the fact that Episode 1, released in the spring of 1999, upheld the consistently high quality of the films previously released. It shows us Obi-Wan Kenobi as a young man, an apprentice to Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn. Qui-Gon Jinn. I believe I pronounced that correctly, I hope so. We also see the father of Luke Skywalker as a young child named Anakin Skywalker, who is discovered to be very powerful in his potential as a Jedi. The viewer is also shown that the various planetary systems of the galaxy have generally been able to maintain order through a political body called the Senate. We're able to see the hints of future troubles as various individuals and groups are indicated to be those considering becoming involved in plans and activities which have in past times caused the downfall of many societies and caused great suffering for their people. The plans and activities that are hinted at as being considered are motivated by the desire for greater wealth, power, and control throughout the galaxy. This film lays the foundation for the entire Star Wars story as it begins to unfold. Likewise, the second film of the prequel trilogy, released in the spring of 2002, continued to provide a high level of quality entertainment and worthwhile information to its worldwide audience. This film, known as Episode 2, allows us to see Anakin Skywalker as a young man, an apprentice to Obi-Wan Kenobi, now a Jedi Master. Anakin has been allowed to study the Jedi ways under the teaching of Obi-Wan. As Anakin's story unfolds, we begin to see some of the events in his life that have an influence on his seeming inability to make a complete commitment to the Jedi way of life. We can see, as the story goes on, the beginning of what can happen in the life of an aspiring Jedi when he begins to have too much of a tendency to think of self rather than a life of service. In fairness to any such aspirant, we should say that it is not easy to live a life which, over years of time, seeks less and less for self and more to serve. Such a life can be even more difficult for a young man Anakin's age, as depicted in this film. Nevertheless, it's possible for this to be done, even though setbacks from time to time are inevitable. Episode 2 also provides us with additional information. It's done very subtly, but is nevertheless being accomplished as a result of the fact that higher positive unseen forces have inspired these films. The information that's being so subtly provided here is at the beginning stages of plans by those hinted at in Episode 1 to take over and eventually do away with the existing republic and its protections for the people. Those plans are slowly and carefully being put into place and carried out. Excuse me. There is one individual who seems to show particular interest in the development and frustrations of young Anakin Skywalker. This film lays the groundwork for the final film in the prequel trilogy. The final film of this trilogy, Episode 3, The Revenge of the Sith, was released to theaters on May 19, 2005, with long lines of Star Wars fans waiting for many hours to be among the first to see the third and final film in this trilogy. Because of the popularity of the stories, the public attended in such great numbers that the film set new box office records for the release of a motion picture. Many have acclaimed that this picture is as good as the original movie released in 1977. That is indeed a high compliment. Those who have attended expecting to see the same high level of entertainment that the Star Wars films have come to exemplify were not disappointed. We see the young man Anakin Skywalker as an extremely capable Jedi apprentice to Master Obi-Wan Kenobi. The members of the Jedi Council are wary of giving Anakin the title of Jedi Master despite his capabilities, because they appear to sense his seeming inability to let go of self completely and seek only to serve selflessly. Anakin finds this to be only one of a number of things that trouble him. A dream then further complicates Anakin's feelings when it seems to indicate unhappy future events concerning his secret wife. Jedis are not supposed to marry. He whom the story shows as one who seeks power over the galaxy sees the concerns and frustrations that Anakin is experiencing and uses them to move Anakin in the wrong direction, down a path that he knows will lead Anakin to the dark side. Anakin, in a moment of crisis in the story, has to make a decision that will direct him down one of two paths, and in that moment of crisis he makes the wrong decision and does so in a way that seems to commit him to the dark side of the Force as Darth Vader for the rest of his life. In seeking for self, even indirectly, he inadvertently brings about that unhappy future event which he had tried so hard to avoid by moving to the dark side of the Force. In addition, he helps to bring about the beginnings of a new empire, evil in its nature, and a resultant time when that which is good in the galaxy must retreat into a quiet time of exile until proper planning and preparation can be made for a rebellion against the empire and light can once more be restored to the galaxy. The film ends with the birth and naming of the twins, Luke and Leia, the children of Anakin, who are then placed secretly into their respective foster homes to later become two of the main characters in the trilogy of episodes 4, 5, and 6, thus leading us directly into the storyline of episode 4, the first release trilogy, called A New Hope. This final film in the second, which is really the first trilogy, and this does get a little bit confusing, has much to teach us, and we will undoubtedly learn more as we review the film from time to time. Only a few important points will be mentioned here, but there are countless others of varying importance. One of the most, if not the most important lesson to be learned in the opinion of this speaker is that those who humbly seek the highest form of spiritual development, to succeed in that endeavor, must, over the years, in the process of daily living, begin slowly to seek less and less for self and more to serve as time goes by. For those aspirants, that principle should be incorporated into their daily lives one day at a time as they are able to do so. A second and very worthwhile lesson of this story is that of the importance of patience. Sadly, when most of us seek patience, we want it right now. Anakin wanted greater progress in his abilities and in the recognition which he wrongly sought. And when the dark side was presented as a shortcut to the things he sought, he was ready to take the bait that led him down the path of darkness. Another very important lesson that this series teaches us is one that is seen over and over again, and that is the importance of forming alliances, when necessary, to overcome the forces of the dark side. That's an important lesson for those of us on the planet who know that global conflict is coming. Thanks for watching. Session 17, the next session, continues with Star Wars, mentions other films, and begins to talk a little bit about the book Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. Thank you again for watching.